Big thank you to our sponsor, HelloFresh. We all know home-cooked meals are so much better for you, but you don't always have time to pull it off. But with HelloFresh, handling all the meal planning, shopping, and most of the prep, it's easier than ever to get dinner on the table quick and painless. For free breakfast for life, go to HelloFresh.com/freewellred. One free breakfast item per box while subscription is active. That's free breakfast for life just by going to HelloFresh.com/freewellred. HelloFresh, America's #1 meal kit.
They're the liberal rednecks. They like cornbread but sex. They care way too much but don't give a fuck. They're the liberal rednecks that makes some people upset, but they got 3 big old dicks that you can suck.
Ski-wee, here we are.
How about you?
I don't know it. Afraid to tell it. That thing they say. Right?
Yeah.
Afraid to tell it. Yeah, that's
Don't
a good
know,
one. Always
afraid
like
to tell it. Or if I knew it, I'd be afraid to tell it.
Yeah.
You know, a couple of them
well, anyway.
Southern idioms or idioms, I guess, if they're from the South. We're lousy with them, and they hit.
I know. I got a bit right now where I'm kind of those come up.
Yeah,
and
me too.
I tried to do one year. I mean, I did do one years ago about like trying to make, because when the whole liberal redneck thing was still like hot off the presses,
trying to make new ones but progressive,
like super progressive ones. And I mean, I had a few. I mean, the bit was fine. Wasn't it wasn't a showstopper or nothing, but it was okay. But I can't even remember them now. But in this new one, it's kind of just an excuse to, because you know how hillbillies, like the majority of them started out as Scottish people, right?
Yeah, right.
Oh,
it's fucking
right. Yeah. So the idea, like, I just really wish we'd never stop talking like that, Yeah. Like if we still talk like that. And then I say, we got all these silly things we say, and it would hit harder if we said them like that, I think. And then I just say a few, and it's, great fun.
Sometimes when I'm on stage, because like, me and you are very different in our approaches, which I mean, we all three are very different in our approaches, but like, I be writing on stage a lot, so sometimes I'll just be blabbering until I get to a thing. I've found that every now and then, because those idioms are so ingrained in me, I will end up using one as a figure of speech in a bit, and I'll almost feel like I'm stealing, even though I'm not. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not, because it's just, that's how we talk. But I'm like, that phrase is so goddamn funny, it almost feels like a cheat for me to use it right there. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But, I mean, hell, I feel like our accent can work like that too sometimes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just literally the way we talk,
I had a video one time I did that was like probably my most liked on TikTok, which is where I gave, like, I did 7 Southern idioms, but one of them wasn't true, and people had to guess which one was made up, and no one got it. I mean, some people from the South, but like, you could tell who wasn't from the South because they were like, they equally sound ridiculous to me, whereas like to me, the one I made up was clearly more ridiculous, but to them, they were like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Mm-hmm. Speaking of what the fuck are you talking about, we've been threading in the group chat. So, noted raconteur and sex pest and pretentious whiner Russell Brand is apparently, I didn't know this till you started putting it in the text stuff, Cord, but he's found the Lord, right?
And we're so proud.
Which, according to Mark, he's already got a Bible app coming out, and that timing feels suspicious to me. I said in the group chat, it feels like when he pivoted hard to the right before it came out that he had done all this sex pest stuff, and that's a good move, because if you're on the right, that hits for them. They don't care. That's actually what my video this week is. Not him, but just sex stuff and how they do it all the time. But anyway,
I mean, that's all of our break in case of emergency. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. And so he did that, and it feels to me like he had the idea.
I don't know what you mean.
I'm kidding.
Just if some shit's gonna come down, just pivot to the right, and then they'll have your back when it happens.
Well, that's the first thing I wanted to say when I knew we were going to talk about this. Is it's our fault. Russell Brand, noted WellRED fan, going years back, stolen jokes from all three of us.
Yep.
Messiah Complex, he got all that from Trey, the whole special.
Saying nonsense, he got that from me.
Yeah, and then
being right sometimes, he got that from you.
Fucking butts and stinking.
I was going to bring up fucking butts,
and stinking.
But we have been saying for years, man, if your back's ever against the wall, all you got to do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so it's on us a little bit. As usual, it's on the liberals.
I just came
The
out
liberals have
with a
done
line
this.
of red hats. I'm already like slowly tub birthing my way in.
The liberals have done this.
So but now, as any good right-wing grifter should, I guess, he's just now apparently getting around to the Lord part. But he's already got this Bible app coming out according to Mark. So I'm, my head's like, which came first? Probably the idea for a Bible app. But dude, the idea that Russell Brand's going to corner the market on Bible apps, I just assume there's got to be plenty of, terrible Bible. What's he bringing to the table here? But
Russell Brand.
Yeah,
Talent.
the Russell Brand.
Sure. Yeah, I guess that's true. But you said talent, because the reason we're talking about all this is because he's been on Twitter lately.
He'll probably interpret. He'll probably give like an NIV version, but like the Russell version.
And that seems to be what he's working on or practicing. Because he's on Twitter, like Mark called it, like giving book reports about like little buddy's first Sunday school or whatever. Like he's going through the Bible and like analyzing it, but some of it is such like surface level analysis that even I, a noted Bible dumb son of a bitch, am reading it like, well, yeah, that's like, isn't that kind of the whole thing with that?
Right.
But he, of course, delivers it in a like
Russell Brandy
grand
way.
Revelation way. Like he's just really up his own ass about it and talking about like, this has just occurred to me. This is truly insightful. Has anyone thought about this? And
you see, Noah, what he did was, instead of just bringing one animal, he brought two, because then they could reproduce, you see. That was thinking on a deeper level. It's chess, right? You got to have them shag a bit so there can be more animals.
But yeah, and what he said, the point to him, the like central point of Genesis, right, was that mankind turned away from God and accepted the Satan's offer of like, eating from the tree of knowledge, or however he put it. But it's like he just kind of restated
that is the point.
what the story is.
Yeah,
like
right.
Mark calling it a book report was pretty good, because it did seem like a freshman in high school or something, like just rephrasing shit in a book, just summarizing stuff. But he's doing that with the Bible, and it's a wild thing. But I just wondered what you guys thought about it, because y'all be knowing the Bible. Y'all went through that a long time ago. So like, when you see a man experiencing this, what do you think about it,
Drew?
I wish the British would stop taking our roles. We are supposed to be the people who do drugs, fuck bitches, and then turn to the Lord.
Right.
Confederate Railroad did this bit in the 90s. And then they came around to all of our churches and told us, don't do the things I did. Don't be like me. And we were like, fucking why, you dickhead? You got to wear women's clothing. You got to be inside women's clothing and women your whole 20s and 30s. And then when your heart was about to explode, you gave it to the Lord. You're like, here's my shitty heart, God. Take it from me. And the fact that we're letting a British person get away with this. Look, dude, think about this. Him and J.D. Vance were just at the RNC, the convention. J.D. Vance and Russell Brand being in the same place, having the same interests, speaking the same. Church is the only place a fat pussy and a fucking drug addict who's pretending to be a good person now, who fucks fat pussies, can be together. And Brand noticed that. There was no place in England for him. And it pisses me off. Do you remember when that story came out that the Spanish Special Olympic basketball team, 10 of them was just regular ass people?
No, not really, but I believe you.
Yeah, that was a huge scandal in the Special Olympic world. Where like 10 of the Spanish were like, "Hey man, we are dumb to the level of we can say the word," and they were like, "I guess you're not allowed to." You know what I mean? It's kind of like being Native American or black here when you apply for a job. It's like, well,
you're not allowed.
So can Jameis Winston play in the Special Olympics?
I think so.
Jamal Williams did.
Yeah, Jamal Williams really. He literally did. His name.
Yeah, he like holds records. I think. In the Special
he's like
Olympics
the fastest guy ever.
Because of course he is, because he's one of the best running backs of all time.
Yes. Yeah. So the Spanish team did that.
Jamal Williams
got in trouble.
Special Olympics.
I'm saying you've got to commend somebody for seeing a lane and filling it. Those basketball players were like, here I am trying to make it in the NBA. I can't. Where is there a place where I can play basketball, but there's a lack of talent? Russell Brand looked at the right wing and said, there ain't no charming motherfucker. There's zero.
Right.
Their best guy is a bow tie wearing grown man who looks like a 14-year-old
Right.
who's preaching Nazism. He's one of their biggest acts. Alex Jones gets red-faced and screams about frogs, and they love him. Literally anyone can do this.
Well, that's
and
true.
Brandon's
Alex
like,
Jones has
great
kind
at
of
it.
got a little something, I think.
He's got a little something. There's Buddy.
He even said it on Rogan.
I literally was saying he's their best. These are their two best, are Tucker and Alex.
Well,
if
dude,
that's the Michael Jordan and LeBron James of your group, Russell Brand looks at that and goes, "There's millions on the table, love."
Of pounds. No, you're right, because also, like, when we're sitting there as people who understand text on a deeper level than the surface that he's, projecting it as, but like he
Subtext,
knows.
some would call that.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you.
Like text, like, but under the main text. Like,
yeah.
Not
I've never heard anyone say text, but I've never heard anyone use text that way, which is correct. But I was
being a little Russell Brandy on accident, frankly, saying a bunch of things that mean. Oh, I mean Trey Crowder, excuse me, not Russell Brandy, saying a bunch of things that mean something you could have said less of. Anyways, point is, Russell Brand, like. To me, like, don't get me wrong, all this reads as him being a dipshit, but he also knows, like, the audience that I'm going for isn't intellectuals. Like, this surface level revelations really hits for these type of people, like Christians and shit like that. That really hits for them, and it's just like how the Southern accent makes you sound dumber, my accent makes you sound smarter, so I don't even really have to say anything that smart. I can just say an obvious thing, and these people will be like, so true, Russell. It's so nice that someone who used to be in Hollywood and is British has turned to the Lord. That's all they need. All they need is him being with the Lord. They don't need him to be anything else.
I'll add to it. I doubt he tweeted that. I feel like there's a team behind this shift. Let me go ahead also, if you don't mind, and give some context. That is text that is in the surrounding areas. To make what you're talking about on the surface make more sense. Brand had a show with Catherine Ryan planned in about, I think it was 2021.
Who's Catherine Ryan? Is that Paul's wife?
Catherine Ryan is that she's a comic out of Great Britain, but she's Canadian, so she sounds American. She's got a real Joan Rivers thing. Do you know who I'm talking about? She does she's got a show with Jimmy Carr. You know the chick that doesn't have a British accent but has a show with Jimmy Carr?
Yeah, I know who you're talking about now.
So they had a show planned together. Well, she doesn't like him because the allegations, it's kind of like with Louis or somebody over here where their circuit knew before it came out.
Yeah.
Right.
So during the taping, it was on their version of MTV. She part of their back and forth during the panel, it's an unscripted show, she's going at him a little bit. She's basically calling him a creep.
Right.
So he starts getting mad about this. Well, around that same time, it comes out that Vice, he storms off set one day because she basically called him a rapist. Then it comes out that Vice is about to do a complete article with the people who ended up coming forward. Like Vice was going to break that story. About the same time, supposedly, that he started recording that show with MTV, he started getting back on YouTube for the first time consistently since 2015. He got an injunction against Vice, which didn't prevent, obviously, those people from coming out, but prevented that story from coming out for a little while. MTV cancels the show. He stops even trying to do the circuit there in Great Britain. And then goes full on into his YouTube, the Great Reset, mind control, the government doesn't want you to know.
We're all in the Matrix.
Pandemic. And it was easy for him because, and I was going to say this, like, you got to give him credit. I guess you don't because anyone can just say anything. But Russell's whole thing in terms of the political world or even really just social structure has always been, I grew up in working class London with a single mom. Shit was hard. I was out in the streets because she had to work a billion jobs to keep food on the table. That's where I got my addiction. I'm for working class people.
Right.
Now, again, I'm trying not to say to his credit because it's very clear he doesn't actually have any beliefs that he holds on to. But he would include, he would say, and that includes black people and immigrants. I'm tired.
Well, dude, he absolutely used to be like, he was always annoying, but like he was at least someone who was he was a big star who was speaking out for things that's like, I'm glad you're doing that.
Yeah, he was like a free thinker, right?
Right. And he had, and I do give him credit for this because this was a little bit risky. He had that Ricky Gervais thing that I do admire from a lot of British comedians. They're so already on the outside of Hollywood.
Right.
They will absolutely attack it. I mean, when he went on that Morning Joe, I think it was, show.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite clips of all. That to me is like that's exactly what a comedian would do. He took everybody down. He took even what they were trying to do down. So he already had
all
this
sitting
sort of
Indian style with his fucking hair just being insane. Yeah.
So he already had this like, I'm not afraid to go after the establishment. I've got all these tattoos. I'm anti-establishment. And he'd take the piss out of himself. And forgetting Sarah Marshall, the role that he played was supposed to be a writer. They rewrote it for him. And half of those jokes were literally about Russell Brand. It wasn't like, oh, you're playing a character. It was like, no, the writers rewrote this role. So when they make fun of that tattoo, they're making fun of you. And he was fine with it.
And he killed in that movie, for the record. He was real fucking good.
He was so good. So he already had this like outsider thing, and he already had this sort of like working class thing. And it's something we've talked about on here before when we talk about hard politics. Bernie Sanders, Trump, why is there an overlap? What is going on? It's populism.
Right.
And I mean, dude, Tucker Carlson, the fucking idiot, once said openly on his thing when talking about Bernie bros, they seem to love socialism, but they want to give it to too many people. Why not more of a national socialism, which is literally what Nazi means? So what I'm saying is there's a dangerous, like, populism can be very dangerous if you base it in xenophobia. If you're afraid of the outdoors. No, if you're afraid of immigrants and all that.
I see what you're saying, because agoraphobic people are afraid of leaving their house. And in this sense, the country is your house. Thank you for defending me,
but I just said the wrong word.
I know, but I'm saying I get where why you thought that.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is, though, is he was able to come from a place close enough. That crunchy to right-wing pipeline was already laid out for him.
Right.
And then when he knew he was going to get accused of rape, it's like, well, how do you defend that? You say they're coming for you. Why are they coming for you? Because I'm telling the truth.
Right.
What truths are you telling? The ones they don't want you to know about, brother. Well, that has to be a little bit bigger than corporations are evil. Right. That's not enough. And so he just latched onto this. He just clearly is addicted to being famous. He has to be famous. And I do have to say, I keep thinking of that drill tweet. I take it back. You do not, in any circumstance, have to give it up for ISIS.
Have to hand it to ISIS, yeah.
Boy, have I ever done that.
That he sees it coming, and he pivoted super, super quickly. And the other thing I've got to say, and this is just him being an opportunist. This goes back to Alex Jones and us talking about how talented he is. It goes back to Tucker. Tucker's the #3 podcast on fucking Spotify right now.
Yeah, and it's Tucker, Shapiro, and then number 4 by the... Okay, it's right Candace. On. Okay. Candace, but Shapiro's in there, and then also the Hawk Tua girl. And by the way, these people are like, they silence us. We don't have a voice and fucking... Right. And it's like, they're like, well, the mainstream media... It's like, dude, podcasts are listened to by more people than the mainstream media. Shut the fuck up. Your voice is out there. Spotify's not taking you down. Shove it up your ass. That's the mainstream media now.
They are the mainstream media. I agree with that 100%. But all I was going to say is... in the West in general, I think, but certainly in this country, we have to acknowledge, why are people looking to these people? Now, for some of them, it's like, hey, that guy said something about black people that I agree with.
Right.
But for a lot of other people, it is genuinely the fact that we live in this, goddamn, I'm going to sound like some pre-brand thing. Corporatocracy, like whatever word you want to throw at it, where people are hurting and they are poor and they're looking around and they're going, hey, what the fuck is CNN on about right now?
Yeah.
And I don't want to pick on CNN. It's everybody.
Well, any of them.
We're about to start World War III. That's what's going on in the Middle East right now. That's absolutely what we're on the brink of. Israel is claiming they're doing that for their own safety. They're blowing people's pagers up, launching rockets into Lebanon. And if no one on the media is acknowledging that. And then you get to Tucker and he's like, hey, this is bullshit. You're like, all right, I'll hear what this guy has to say. And then if you are kind of a hateful person, 3 months later, your fucking dad's sending you memes about how bees are making trans people take over the world or whatever the fuck it is Jordan Peterson's talking about. And you're like, how the fuck did this happen? Well, because there was a lane. There was a window there. That's what Russell attached himself to. He saw a fucking lane. He saw that people weren't being... It's just like Trump. We said it in our book. Trey, you've talked about it a lot. On Bill Maher, you talked about it. There's a lane there where if you're not addressing people's real fucking issues, somebody will, and then they'll use that pain and that anger and that feeling that they're an underdog, and they'll turn it into something fucked up. Russell Brand just saw it. He just saw it, and he's a bad person.
Yeah, I mean, dude, I couldn't agree with you more in the sense of, like, first off, I hate when people try to act like you can't care about more than one thing at a time. But, like, there's some people where I live, like, number one, they're not on Twitter, right? They don't, like, at this point, you should know who Trump is. That's not what I'm saying. But, like, they're not on Twitter to see every dissection of all this racism shit. They only see the surface level stuff of, like, he's talking about this, they're talking about this, right? And then they'll see Fox News talking about possible World War III, and then they cut over to fucking CNN or MSNBC, and they're like, why isn't Lovie Smith coaching the Jaguars right now? And they're like, who gives a fuck? You know what I mean? Which, like, you get what I'm saying? Like they're none of them are talking about the things that matter to them, but these, like you said, these people are. They're talking about it in a very hurtful, harmful, ignorant, not even correct way, but like they're talking about it.
I mean,
going back to 2016, they're not talking about like how people in rural towns haven't had a job since the Clintons shipped them off, or the opioid epidemic killing all of their brothers, sons, and fathers. They're just like, these people are racist, and it's like, okay, some of them are CNN,
for sure, but like
when they see that, they're going to turn somewhere else.
But they also, I'm actually been talking about this a little bit too, is that they care, they talk about so many superfluous and ridiculous and pointless things.
There's cognitive dissonance for sure. They
Disney
also
movies
say
and Bud Light and all that.
They
shit,
also
all
say
the fucking
don't
time outrage campaigns about nothing at all. Like,
well, bro,
they
that's all they do.
They also say don't listen to celebrities tell you how to vote. Fuck Taylor Swift. Oh my God, Russell Brand, he's our king. Like,
but people, but being like, nobody's talking about what really matters. And then some right winger is like this, Dylan Mulvaney. That's what really matters, or whatever.
Well, I'm not trying to
do you know what I mean?
I'm not trying to make Russell Brand fans out to be victims. I hope that's not what came across.
No.
What I'm saying is, if people are going, why the fuck are people attaching to this? And it's like, because in a world where nothing is worth attaching to, this guy has nice hair. He says their book is special. And he's cool and hot. He's cooler and hotter than J.D. Vance anyway. Again, he saw the lane. He was like, look at this fat face fucking pussy. I could do that way better.
But also, they're not just saying, and again, they're lying. They're being disingenuous, all this. But they're not just saying, hey, guys, Dylan Mulvaney got a Bud Light sponsorship. Be mad about it. They're saying, Dylan Mulvaney got a Bud Light sponsorship, and this is part of their plan to get shop's class out of school and get you to learn that it's okay if you chop your dick off. They frame it like that, and so those people they go, well, this is a big issue, because, like, obviously it's bullshit, but if you're someone who truly believes the teachers are trying to convince your kid to cut his dick off and shit in a litter box at school, that's going to be a big issue to you. It's not happening, but
the whole...
Even what we were just talking about were World War III. Instead of framing it as the American colonization experiment extending to fucking Israel, with Benjamin Netanyahu being a fucking European who's pretending to be someone from the Middle East so he can go there and control the oil, they're going, the Jews! And these people
Muslims
who've been hearing that their whole life being like, God damn, man, I didn't want to believe... Even, like, I feel like people
But the
who
Jews
think
hit for them in this situation.
But even... Yeah, it depends. It depends on who we're talking about. There's plenty of people in the Russell Brand camp who don't like Israel, surprisingly. All I'm saying is, I'm trying to frame this thing out into what we're living in. We're living in a time where people really, really want someone to tell them what's going on.
Sure.
The truth.
And what to think.
And no one is even able to do it. It's not even possible because of our phones and misinformation and AI, blah, blah, blah. I know I sound like DJ, but
No.
But this is happening in front of us. We see it with our parents. We see it with people on Facebook. This is what is going down right now.
No, you're spitting.
and it's like, well, they're gonna attach to something because a lot of people want someone to make them feel better or someone to make them feel seen. We've been saying that for years. We've been basically blaming Trump on that to a great extent, right? Well, here is a cool, hot British guy doing it. Of course, it worked.
I've got an anecdote that I wanted to bring up anyways, but it actually fits right here, which is my mother-in-law talking about like what they see, what they're getting fed, what everybody wants you to believe. My mother-in-law and her new boyfriend, he's always wanted to see the redwood forest out there in California or whatever. So they went out last week and saw it. So naturally, they're very close to San Francisco. So they're going to we're going to go spend a day or two in San Francisco. And her mom, she's reporting all this back to us when she gets back. She is blown away by how much she enjoyed San Francisco because, in her words, it's just not what I thought it would be. And I was like, what did you think it would be? And she's like, well, like, there's homeless people everywhere and all that, whatever, like checkpoints, people looking for guns or whatever. She's like, I mean, I didn't see any of that. And I was like, right. Like, kind of how there are homeless people in Chattanooga. It's just, well, we all kind of know where that place is. So we just go to the downtown. I was like, it's like everywhere, right? She's like, I just was blown away. She's like, this is not how I pictured San Francisco. She watches Fox News a lot, right? Well, so it's like,
I'm the biggest thing that I'm writing new material about right now is all about education in schools and shit. Some of that, the woke school thing. And like you said, you're like, when people frame it like this and they tell, like, if you said, if I truly did believe that public schools were like cutting kids' dicks off or whatever, that would be alarming, which of course I agree with. But part of what I'm saying I don't get how that works. But I know it's like they think about public schools elsewhere. But my whole bit is about how like,
that's the thing. It's never where
MAGA,
you are.
In MAGA world, rural America, which is where a lot of this propaganda is focused at, everybody goes to public school. There's only one school. It is a public school. And, like, all the teachers there are the opposite
Republicans.
Of what, like I talk about, Miss Eva Neal Plumley and Coach Ledbetter who called us all gay for taking water breaks and how not woke any of it is. But then they talk about woke public schools cutting kids' dicks off and letting them piss in litter boxes and all this shit, and they still eat it up. And I know it's like the answer is simple. They're like, well, they mean like Denver public schools.
And they mean that it's going to end up growing like a microorganism.
And it'll end up getting here, whatever. Yeah, right. Yeah. But it's just like, but there, how many different times does there need to be some version of like, not even her experience, but also people like the story of those people who got in a big caravan and went down to the border because they were going to put themselves on the front line of the border invasion, Biden's border invasion. And they got down there and then were like on camera to the news. They were saying like, there is no invasion. Like I thought there was an invasion. Like how many different versions of that type of shit has to happen before people stop believing it?
Well, they don't see that part.
It just happened in Springfield, dog.
I just got back from Springfield. I was going to bring that up too. Like
there were some bikers. To their credit, the bikers were like, "Yeah, I don't know. We showed up and we didn't have to kill nobody.
Right?
Guess we'll go home." You know what I mean? Well, it's almost like they were mad. Like it's kind of bullshit, man. We thought thered be some Haitians out here, but fucking kids that we could murder. But
they definitely
turns out they were all just having barbecues, and we kind of liked them.
Me and Travis Irvine, where he was with me on a run through Ohio last week, and we went to Springfield on Saturday and we're there for a few hours, and they happened to be having the big annual mustard festival, right? Where they give out hot dogs for people. I mean, the jokes kind of wrote themselves. They had little weenie dog races and stuff,
Hell yeah.
Cute animals there running for their lives in Springfield, Ohio. But it was like Travis doing stuff for Last Podcast Network. He like does a lot of man on the street shit. He's done that for years. So he did that in Springfield, and I was with him. And he talked to a lot of people, all white. We're at the Mustard Festival. It's white people. The Haitians are doing their own thing. White people in Springfield, many of whom are middle-aged and stuff. And they're like, all of them, plenty of them, Travis would he tried to get them all to shit-talk J.D. Vance or get into J.D. Vance or whatever. And plenty of them would balk at that part. Plenty of them would either be like, I'd rather not talk about politics, or, well, I hope J.D. Vance just does a good job, or some shit like that. Right. They clearly are not like lefties. But all of these people, though, were saying at the beginning when Travis was like asking them, what would you say to people who haven't been to Springfield, who've seen all this stuff in the news? They all were like some version of like, I'm just really frustrated and disappointed that this has happened because This is a great
That's not
community,
true.
and it's nothing like that. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like this is my town. So these are like Republican people, you know, who are saying like, why do people believe this stuff about my town? This town, I love this town. This town is great, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, but it has to. That's why they've always been. It has to affect them like personally. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And even
Your
though it
brother,
affects,
your son has to
Why
be
do you
gay.
think we're San Francisco?
right?
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Right. Yes. But that's what's so frustrating about it. Is it's like, I just wish it didn't have to work like that. I wish we didn't have to somehow affect every single one of them personally.
It does.
With some of this shit to even make them
also-
start to consider it, you know, because that's not feasible, obviously.
There's a bit Tim Dillon has. It's sort of the reverse of your bit. Tim Dillon, by the way, did exactly what Russell Brand's doing and claims it's satire. And, you know, if I get put on blast for blasting another, I'm not trying to, he's very talented and very funny. And he says some things that are good that need to be said, but he's also clearly like playing to a certain crowd. But he has this joke that's sort of the reverse of yours, Trey, in which he lists two examples of things that I think turned out to be true. Some sort of like special school in Brooklyn where one of the teachers was teaching kids some very,
Well,
we'll say, intense gender study type things. And then a teacher in San Francisco who had transitioned and I think it turns out was a crazy person.
yeah.
Apart from that, had taught him some wild things. And the gist of that joke is, you think parents hear this in Iowa and they're wrong to freak out? And it's like, of course, if you hear that, it should. But the thing is, this is what you leave out. Those teachers were fired,
Right.
or
Well,
reprimanded. I don't remember the whole thing, but like they were, like. But he's leaving this part out. You know what I mean? His is a sort of like. He's not saying this is what everyone in San Francisco is like. He's saying you seemed crazy if you're not bothered by this.
So the second half of the bit that I'm doing right now, I start talking about the boys' public school and how it is woke because they go to public school and I acknowledge that it's woke and I talk about being woke. And then from that I say in the midst of that, I say something like, you know, which to hear the right tell it means they're going to come home without their dicks any day now. Right. And I go, so basically it's just like, I have kids, I'll tell you right now, it's a woke school. And they're obviously not confiscating their dicks. Like it's still
really,
you know, it's still fine. And then
really what it means is, hey, sometimes they might bring up that the CIA might have killed Martin Luther King Jr., you know, or some shit like that.
It was the FBI, and in court, it was found that they allowed him to die on purpose.
Well, hey, speaking of hot dogs and mustard and stuff, listen, we all know that home-cooked meals, all right, are a lot better for you. They're better for you. They hit harder, but you don't always have time to pull them off. But with HelloFresh handling all the meal planning, shopping, and most of the prep, it's easier and quicker than ever to get dinner on the table, and it's painless. There's no more endless recipe searching or spending money on a whole jar of spices when you only really need a pinch, and then you leave it in there, and then you're like, do these really expire? They do, by the way. With HelloFresh, everything you need to make delicious meals comes right to your door, pre-portioned. You ain't wasting nothing. It's also fresh, plus the included step-by-step recipe cards that make cooking simple. There's always new flavors to explore with the ever-changing menu of 50 recipes to choose from every week. Just pick your meals and your delivery date. It's literally that simple. Trey, you're a huge HelloFresh devotee, correct?
Yes, and I have been for years. Thrilled they sponsor the show, but I've been with HelloFresh for way longer than that. I mean, I've been with HelloFresh for longer than I've even lived in California. So we're talking like going on a decade now, 8 years or so. Me and Katie have been getting HelloFresh. That's how much it hits for me. Everything about it hits for me. There's stuff in there that I would never think to cook myself because I'm a trash monster, and they'll have like French things, Korean things, whatever, stuff that ain't going to come up otherwise. But now I'm cooking bibimbap or whatever. I would never have cooked no bibimbap. Boy. But now I do. I'm a bulgogi boy now. And it makes you just feel like you're doing something because you are doing something. It also saves weight. I hate wasting food. I hate throwing stuff out. When I was buying all my own groceries to cook, I threw stuff out all the time because I buy too much or whatever. With HelloFresh, none of that happens. It's just one of my favorite things, period, and favorite sponsors that we have. I love HelloFresh, and it hits very, very hard for me, and I think it'll hit for y'all too. So listen, for free breakfast for life, go to HelloFresh.com/freewellred. 1 free breakfast item per box while your subscription is active. That's free breakfast for life just by going to HelloFresh.com/freewellred. HelloFresh.com/freewellred for free breakfast for life. HelloFresh, America's #1 meal kit.
Bop, ba, bim, ba, bap, bop,
Bop,
boom, bop.
boom, bop.
I assume we're gonna move on. I want to say one more thing.
We don't have to. Go on. Get it. Go in, boy.
It's really hard. I mean, like in a lot of ways, hard, like famously hard, to try and synthesize such a big cultural moment or issue in 90 seconds and be funny or smart or both. I mean, arguably, we're sitting here because Trey has a talent of doing that.
Not
that
in
is
90
unique.
seconds. He don't.
I don't mean he can do it in 90 seconds. I mean, over the course of a year, he figures out how to do it. Oh, I get it. It's my bad.
He's verbose and he don't hit.
We like to have a handle on the moment we're currently living in. It's going to take years, and hopefully America survives long enough, and we all do too, to like read what cultural anthropologists and historians sort of synthesize about this time period. That, being said, to me, there's a clip I saw recently that gets at exactly how Russell Brand can exist, and then in some ways, what it is he's taking advantage of, like how a person like Russell Brand can exist, and then what he did exactly. This happens to be about Israel-Palestine.
Here we
There's
go.
a clip Bill Maher and Henry Winkler are talking about it.
Okay.
Oh, I saw
Bill
that.
Maher and
The
Bill Maher
fun's
says
coming through,
Bill Maher
baby.
says whatever he says, and look, I don't think I've made any bones about it. I'm a big Free Palestine guy. I'm not a pro Hamas guy. I think that Netanyahu used what happened on October 7th as a fucking pretext to do some bullshit he'd been wanting to do for a long time.
Pretext, is that like the text that comes like before the text?
Before the text, yeah.
Right, okay.
Yeah. So it's and the text in this case is murdering babies. But Bill goes on his rant about how evil Hamas is and who's killing babies and who's not. And Henry just goes, he's a very sweet guy, but it's clear that he's not for Israel. And he just goes, and it's almost like, it's not even an argument. It's almost like a sincere, he goes, are we seeing the same footage?
Yeah. He said it seems to be indiscriminate. Their killing seems to be indiscriminate.
Right. And I do agree with that second statement. I recognize a lot. But that first one to me is where we're living at.
Right.
Because the truth is, if I'm talking to my father-in-law, no.
Right.
He's fucking not.
Right.
He's literally not. He won't accept it. He's to the point now, in my opinion, where he can't. But that aside, understand that we're living in a time where people are experiencing a very different reality from you. Well, if you know that,
right,
and you're good at shaping people's reality, which everyone here is, whether we want to acknowledge that's what we do or not, we make people laugh. That's an uncontrollable urge. We pull that out of them. Brand can do that.
Mm-hmm.
If you realize that's the time you're living in via the internet and you're about to get accused of rape,
right,
other than baby rape, the worst thing you can be accused of is rape, maybe eating people. You know that's coming down the pipe, and you know you're living in the time of everyone has a different reality. He just got out and got ahead of it, dog. Yeah. And it's really genuinely wild to sort of see, damn, our best and most talented storytellers in the age where the story you tell the most, if you're on YouTube, if you're on the phone, is either your own or the one you want to present to the world, just how evil it can get. I mean, we're our own advertisers. So it almost like reminds me of like when the tobacco companies were making kids think it was cool to smoke tobacco to get them hooked on it. It's like Russell Brand, the rapist, is using those same tactics, but instead of selling cigarettes, he's selling Russell Brand. And he pivoted to Christianity. It's really dark. It's super, like, he is, in my opinion, a very broken, evil person. That's obvious to me because I don't buy for a second that he means any of this, which means he probably didn't mean any of the working class stuff either. It's like he just will say what he needs to feel like he's the guy that he wants to, be presented as. And that's dark. It makes me really depressed, guys. That's our defining time of history. That's what we're doing on TikTok.
Well, you brought this guy up earlier. Another countryman of his that you mentioned briefly that I wanted to ask about, particularly Cho, because I think he keeps up with him, I believe. You brought up Ricky Gervais earlier, and I hadn't really kept up with Ricky Gervais really over the years, but I saw him get brought up on Reddit recently, and people started talking about how he's I didn't watch his last, at least his last special, maybe his last two, I'm not sure, but people were talking about how he had a whole bunch of anti-trans shit and anti-woke stuff and that type of thing. Is he because he's also a hardcore atheist, right?
Which is Ricky to me hasn't really changed much.
Yeah, I think he's just wrong.
Yeah. Ricky. So to me, this is my opinion on Ricky. Number one, to go back to what Drew was saying, there was about Russell Brand. There was a famous actress. It might have been Ingrid Bergman that on her deathbed was like, drama is easy, but comedy is hard. So in my opinion, with somebody like Russell Brand, if you can make people laugh and you can very easily shift into just making them feel any other emotion, that's a cakewalk. You know what I mean? Writing a fucking Jerry Mander sketch for me is 10 times harder than writing an opinion piece for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. So this motherfucker has if you have that ability to change people with humor, it's so easy to just go, now I'm just going to say a bunch of stuff and I can easily puppet them. But yes, with Ricky, so to me, Russell Brand has said out loud, I'm on the right wing, I'm a Christian conservative or whatever. Ricky Gervais has not done that. They have just adopted him because they've seen what he is and they're like, oh, he's anti-woke, he's anti-this or whatever. And I'm not defending Ricky at all. I do like that Ricky's not come out and said, I'm voting for Trump, because I think he thinks Trump is a fucking idiot moron. I think that, we look at the world in black and white. You're like, Ricky Gervais is making anti-trans jokes and he's anti-woke. He must be a Trump supporter. It's like, nah, he's just a shitty liberal. You know what I mean?
He also ain't even an American, right?
He's not even, right. Well, neither is fucking Russell Brand. But either way, I don't really think Ricky has changed all that much. Ricky's whole deal the whole time has been I'm going to say the thing that makes everyone go ooh and ah. There's those certain comedians, Ricky Gervais is one of them, who they say this all the time, and I could not disagree with it more. They're like, getting an ooh and an ah to me is just as good as getting a laugh. No, it's not. Do you know how easy it is to get a ooh and a ah? All you got to do to get a ooh and a ah is to walk on stage as a white man and say the N-word. That's all you got to do. People will ooh and ah your ass, right? To get a laugh is a lot harder. Now, if you get a ooh and an ah that is followed by a trickled down laugh because they were like, oh, this is too much, never mind, it's fucking funny, that's good. But they go, I'm just looking for any reaction. What do you mean? Do you know how easy it is to just get a reaction from people? I could go on stage with no notes whatsoever and get a reaction from fucking everybody. I could just walk on stage in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and just be like, I love abortion. It's killing babies. I'm fine with killing babies. I'd get a huge reaction. Where's the fucking joke there? You know what I mean? But I don't think Ricky's really changed that much. I just think that culture has shifted. Ricky's the same, and now it's more in his favor to this one group of people, and so they've sort of adopted him. That's how I feel.
He's just, by the way, just the edgelord.
The difference between the difference between Ricky Gervais and Russell Brand, and why I would a little bit defend Ricky Gervais, is simply, and I'll admit this, only because I respect Ricky Gervais's body of work. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
His body of work actually hits for me. Whereas Russell Brand was good in that movie and I enjoyed that, but that was it. So fuck him, let him have him. But Ricky Gervais has given us very good quality, liberal bent entertainment. So I'm like, well, he did that.
I think that Ricky Gervais is a sincere person and he's just sincerely wrong. I think that anyone objectively looking at Russell Brand's arc would have to either believe he's an insincere person, which is what I believe.
He's very insincere.
Or that he's had a very strange trajectory that's one of one. And I guess it's possible. I guess it's certainly possible Russell Brand found the Lord and got baptized in the Thames River. By the way, literally that's a thing he did. And that's another thing, too, about turning Christian. When you're raised up in the tradition, you do kind of learn how to recognize people that were oh, this all just hits for you. Whether it's standing in front of the church and saying, Like there was this guy growing up who would always talk about how horrible of a sinner he is.
Right.
This dude just had a humiliation shame. He just wanted to get up and cry in front of a bunch
Right.
of strangers because he'd do it every week. Whereas this fucking guy, Jim, gets tears in his eyes still every time he sees me, tells me he loves me. It's like this dude really believes. What I'm saying is Russell Brand is so obviously just sniffing his own farts.
Oh,
He's
yeah.
always sniffed his own farts, and this is the only room that'll still let him fart in it.
Well, that's
Right.
that's
And-
funny that you say that, because I remember like dudes back at my church who would like, they would go up and give their, even though we'd heard their testimony a million times, like that was their
Right.
thing in church. They would go up and give their testimony, and like we were talking about with the Confederate Railroad guy, talk about all this shit that they used to do and blah blah blah. And you're talking about like a humiliation kink or something. It's after you say it 10 fucking times on 10 Sundays, it's almost like you're proud of it. So you're so proud of it that you want everybody to know what you did. But if you say it in this, they have to forgive you and no one can be mad that you did it. You know what I mean? It's like they want everyone to know that they used to bang women all the time. But if I say it here, I'm doing it for the glory of God. Everyone will still know, by the way, that I used to fuck. You
Right.
know what I mean?
Yes, 100%. It's either that or I don't actually feel the grace and
Anything.
forgiveness of God in my heart. So I keep coming back up here chasing that because I can't let go of it. And I think with Brand, it's more of just, like I said, he's just smelling his own farts. And I think Ricky and most comedians smell our own farts. I think most of us are like pretty open about that. Do you know what I mean?
For sure, dude.
It's like, yeah, it's what we do. We smell our own farts. And I thought Brand had some of that in him. I mean, he literally called his last or next to last special Messiah Complex.
Mhm.
Yeah.
He's literally dabbled in the notion that like, hey guys, I kind of got a Messiah complex. So for him to turn into the very, faith where that kind of phrase comes from is wild. But anyway, going back to it, I just think that Ricky is sincere, which is part of what's so offensive, honestly, about a lot of what he does.
He
It's
means
like, oh,
it.
you mean this?
Yeah,
But
right.
it is like, it's like that Roy Wood Jr. joke of like, let him hang the rebel flag because at least I know.
Mhm.
Well, what's interesting,
Bram was lying to us and maybe himself, in my opinion. Or maybe he literally got saved. And
No, I
that's
agree with
honestly
you.
weirder.
I agree with you, but dudes like Ricky and the people who love Ricky are like, no, that's what comedy is that nothing is off limits and you make fun of everyone. And I'm like, okay, well then why don't you do jokes about how stupid transphobes are? Like you're not doing
Right.
that. So it's not, it's no, you're punching down. Like if it's true that you really want to make fun of everyone and you want to make fun of everything, then make fun of the thing that you're being right now. You know what I mean? Like,
Dude,
at least
well,
be
it's also
self-effacing about
so
it.
much of it for so long. If we're talking about comedy specifically, it was just like broadly generally accepted for a very long time that like when the idea of wokeness got introduced to comedy, it's like, oh, there's things you can't talk about. Like you can't be mean to trans people. You can't do stuff like this, whatever. And then, but obviously that hasn't been true in so long. Some of the biggest specials ever made, people got paid millions of $20 million to make these specials where they do exactly that. And now that is the like,
It's mainstream.
All the biggest comedians in the world are doing that type of stuff and have been.
Right.
But now still like making fun of like racist or making fun of the Bible or something like that, that they would still call that like that's still pandering or that's still hack or something when it's like, but it's completely shifted the other direction now.
And
you know
I
what
agree
I mean? Like
with
that you are the ones that are pandering directly to your crowd by doing that stuff that you say you can't do while
Right.
still acting like
And it's so
the other one
obvious.
is different. But I do wonder though. if that is a pendulum that will like swing back eventually.
It's already
Like,
started.
in the comedy world. You know,
I firmly believe that there is not such a thing as a subject that you can't joke about.
right.
I firmly believe that, but it's how you do it. And it's like, dude, there's nothing wrong with making a trans joke, but when the punchline is that they're not human, it doesn't have to be that way. Like I've done trans jokes on stage. I mean, granted, they were like pro trans shit that was Trojan horsed into whatever, but like I think you can joke about AIDS, but what's the joke of being like everyone with AIDS deserves it? Like some of these are not punchlines. There's no creativity to it. Like, okay, like for instance, there's a famous meme that goes around. It was when Idris Elba was on Hot Ones and he takes a bite of the wing and he's whatever.
Yeah.
And people always
Right.
put this as like the mosquito that bit into Magic Johnson.
Right.
That's a joke about AIDS, and it's funny. I'm sorry, but it is. But if your joke about AIDS is like, so people with AIDS are going to hell and they're degenerate butt fuckers who should never have existed, what's the joke? You're just saying a hateful thing. Like, you
Just saying
can
the
talk
truth.
about,
Oh, right, hateful.
yeah,
thing.
right. But you know what I'm saying? Like, you can totally make a trans joke, but I don't understand. And by the way, you can make a joke about trans that the punchline is that they're degenerate human beings. It's just not great, and it's shitty, and it's not. You're not being honest about. I just thought we could joke about everything.
Gillis did it. I mean, and I'll tell the joke in a second. Jeselnik said it best recently on, I think, Theo Vaughn's podcast. I just saw the clip go viral of like, our job's to get away with it.
Right.
Now, I do acknowledge that what you can get away with changes over time. It changes over audiences. But that's not new. It's not a new thing that a joke that works in front of all white people in Iowa may not work in front of all black people in Atlanta, and then might be a completely different thing in front of a mixed crowd full of tourists in New York City. That has always been the case with comedy, both in terms of cultural references and where their line is. So that's not new, but I absolutely acknowledge that lines change, and I acknowledge that for a lot of the old timers, it was like wild to kind of go through that period, but all that happened was the internet blew up.
Just write new
and
stuff.
They just didn't know. We were
Right.
just like,
Yeah.
oh, this hurts gay people's feelings? And
Dude.
some of us went, all right, we'll cool it. And a lot of other people went, nah, I don't care. And that's all that happened. The Gillis joke was basically that racism, the civil rights movement worked because the Alabama football team started going undefeated. And if trans people want rights, they need to learn how to run the power T.
Yeah.
That's a fucking hilarious
It's hilarious
joke.
because it's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. It's edgy. You're essentially saying the only reason black people got rights in America is because they're good at football. That's not very cool to say at like a party, but honestly, it's a weirdly woke.
I was about to say,
Right.
no, I think it is. I'll do this with Gillis all the time, I feel, but I think I'm being genuine about it. I think
I'm a huge fan.
really what that's saying, he's saying that he's making fun of white people and racist in the South and all that by being like, if they couldn't do this,
It wouldn't
we
have
still
happened.
wouldn't let them drink from the water fountains.
Right,
Like,
yes.
because they did this, it hits for. It's not really. That's where it's really coming from. In my opinion, like you
Of
said,
course.
that's a weirdly woke kind of.
Of
joke,
course
even though
not.
it is. It's edgy,
Like,
or whatever.
of course
but-
that's what he means. But then those
Right.
people interpret it as like he's saying like, yeah, just do that and everything's fine. Run, motherfucker.
I don't know how much our fans care or want to hear about comedy. I never know, and I'm
It would
sure
be
they don't
nice
want
if
to
they
hear
cared
me.
a lot.
I'm sure they don't want to hear me
Yeah.
talk about my own jokes. But speaking of sniffing your own farts,
Well, we all
And
do
the thing-
that for the record.
the thing I did about Tennessee drag band, I have a 15-minute thing on YouTube. I'm very proud of it. I put it out right when that
It's
was
very
going
funny.
down. And there's a part in there where I talk about how these people claim that they're not woke and that's why they're awful people because they hate wokeism. And then I say I'm not woke and I list the reasons. Well, one of them I got this feedback on a lot where I was talking about how like you hear about puberty blockers and like people putting off puberty for their kids because their 12-year-olds and 13-year-olds say that they're trans. And the whole point I was making, I was like, that makes me uncomfortable. Like
Sure.
hearing that makes me feel a way that's not like, I don't think it's great, but I don't
I'm
tell
with
them
you.
what to do with their kids.
Right.
And then I got like very
Also-
educated in the comments of like why it is good to do that, because if you can put it off and then puberty will come later if they change their mind, but you can't undo it and all that. And people were basically like, they were cool about it, but they were like, you're wrong. And I
Right.
was kind of like, yeah, that was my point.
Right.
Is that being wrong is genuinely acceptable if you're not trying to make everyone live their life according to you. We live in a time in America where people are clamoring for, seemingly to me, for someone who makes everyone else live the way I want them to live. And even the left's
Right.
guilty of that. That's
Yeah.
kind of what the response to wokeism was. Well, Russell Brand just switched teams. He just saw that it was like, man, people really want someone to say, this is how it is, this is how it should be, and this is what we got to do, and who we got to hurt to make it that way. And you can make a lot of money off that.
Well, also, dude, like I think that people, a lot of the right wing people and the anti woke people, they really underestimate how forgiving people can actually be. I know they say like, oh, you say one thing and then you're fucking torched, and I'm like, well, usually it's because the person doubles down on that shit. Like, it is okay to make mistakes, especially when you're younger. And like, I just have always been like, why don't you just say sorry? Like, why don't you just be like, damn, that was wrong, whatever, go on my life, and then just let it play out however it's going to play out? Because like, I'll be the first one to admit, I'm not terrified that I'm going to get fucking canceled for it. Like, I remember, like, granted, this was 16 something years ago. I'm doing comedy exclusively in the Deep South, right? And at that time, I considered myself a liberal person. And I had to get told I sent off a tape to a festival to like I think it was Limestone or something like that. Mm-hmm. And they sent me back. They were like, bro, are you serious? And I'm like, what the fuck? And they're like, you used a slur in your tape. And I was like, wait, what? Well, I did? And they were like, yeah. And the whole thing was, I did a bit where I was talking about, I was like, Justin Bieber music, or, something faggoty like that. And like, I was like, oh shit. Cause like in my brain, we hadn't got the memo that was the N-word for, like, it was just like, if you don't mean it, like, you wouldn't call a gay person that, but it's fine to call music that. And like, I was like, oh fuck, man. I was like, I was just doing shit and I didn't even really think, and I didn't ever use it again after that, because I was like, fuck, I was so blind on that. You know what I mean? Like, because like in my brain, I was like, that's not how I meant it, therefore it's fine. And that's not the case. So like, I'm willing to admit I said it. I got told you're wrong. And instead of being like, fuck these people, I'll say whatever I want. I was like, they're right. We just ain't got that in the South yet. We're a little bit late on that. You're right. My bad.
But honestly, if you just go, this may not have been true 5 years ago, but it's true now. In comedy, if you just go to yourself, yeah, I don't care about that, I'm going to keep doing it. But you don't out loud go, fuck these people.
Yeah, of
you
course.
Can't tell me what to do.
And I've done that.
Nobody will care.
I've done that.
It's that great Chad Daniels joke. When you get canceled, you don't lose your career. You just get a new set of fans.
Right.
And that is what everyone's going for now. And watching people go for it. Honestly, sometimes to their credit, people on the right can see it. Whitney Cummings did a whole thing where she was like, what are you going to cancel? And people who hate cancel culture was like, what the fuck is this? Of course, they also hate women. So
yeah, that's true. Well,
but yes, but no, sometimes
I got to go pick up my son soon. Okay. Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead, Trent.
Sometimes you could just, it's very obvious that a person is trying to do, a comedian in particular. It's like, hope I don't get canceled for this. It's like, you want more than anything in the world to be canceled.
That's what you want to go viral.
Because being canceled is incredibly lucrative, and you know that, and you're trying to make that happen. But anyway, all right.
And Brand got ahead of it, and he's the first one I think we've seen who preemptively got himself canceled. Rest in peace, Morgan Spurlock, who tried it, and then tried to manifest that into money, and it worked. I think Russell Brand's a genius. I just think he's a bad guy.
Yeah.
Right on. Well,
where
this
you gonna
weekend,
be, Drew?
I'll be in Bristol and then Atlanta Friday and Saturday with Donnie Singstack, and then I'll be in Missouri next week and a bunch of other places coming up. TreyCrowder.com. Come see me. I
got Asheville on October 4th. I've got Chattanooga, part of the Lookout Comedy Festival, October 18th or 19th, whatever that Friday is. I think that's
Are we going to hang out?
Yeah, if you want to.
Friday's the 18th, I think, Drew.
I'm definitely 18th. Coming to your show.
I got the 18th. Come get on it. Come do the show.
I'd love to.
Danielle won't care.
Of course
she'll be pumped, dude. And then I'll be in Bristol November 8th and 9th. Those are the only ones I remember off the top of my head.
Go ahead, Trey.
I went first. You did? You hear me? Drew, you heard me.
He was reading stuff on his phone. I think he was gearing up for something.
I'm sorry. I will be on October 11th at the Uptown Comedy Corner. I'm doing Comics for Kamala, and listen to this lineup. It is me, the legendary George Wallace, and also the legendary DC Curry, who, a little bit of WellRED lore, once told me and Trey that we hit at a showcase where no one else hit but us. So
That's
me,
true.
DC Curry, and George Wallace, October 11th, Comics for Kamala, Atlanta, Georgia, Uptown Comedy Corner. Also, as you're listening to this, I have a new Atlanta Journal-Constitution opinion column out today where I was talking about how everyone is so mean and also paying tribute to Jimmy Carter. Also, go to welovecorey.com. You get stuff. And, if I may, thank you all for listening to the WellRED Show. We'd love to stick around longer, but we got to go. Tune in next week if you got nothing to do. Thank you. God bless you. Good night and skill.
Fart.
Fart.
Art in my butt.